Hey everybody, Keisha here, and today I am here with my friend
Jennifer Guskin,
and we need your help. We are right now working on advocacy for combating human trafficking. Here's why. So we'll give you a little bit of background of our story and why we're doing what we're doing.
I was adopted as an infant by a couple who sold me throughout my childhood. I have been to Epstein Island and on multiple Lolita Express types of flights as a child. After I went public, Child Protective Services opened a substance-exposed newborn case, even though all tests came back negative, and they told me that if I wouldn't stop posting on social media, I would never see my daughter again. I started to connect how I was adopted as an infant and then sold throughout my childhood, how many other children who have been through the adoption, foster, and CPS pipelines have also been trafficked to Epstein's Elk.
And as many of you guys know already, based on the work that we do at the Keras Project, I'm an American Indian born in Canada under the Jay Treaty. My father and I were exposed in the improper contagion mitigation for the COVID pandemic in early 2020. As a result of this, I lost everything: a house, cars, corporate assets, jobs. Bank accounts were shut down in Canada, and I fled to the US as an American Indian, fully documented, and was trafficked by rogue agents in ICE and other agents in the government, and forced to live with single American men. I was even imprisoned for 7 months initially, and then trafficked throughout the states. Put on full surveillance tracking and wasn't allowed to leave the city, house, or state without permission, or work without permission. And that happened for many years, and I was on and off the streets because of that, and in and out of shelters. And that is just a small example of what many go through in this trafficking system, be it the family courts or otherwise. So that's why the Keras Project will be going to DC to speak with representatives and do live reporting. We're also going to be in contact with other families who are dealing with human trafficking, and through the CPS courts or through any other means, lesser versions of trafficking, and doing reporting on them live and otherwise. We will also be working on, we ultimately want to shine light on what's going on with the trafficking here in the US. And we also want to meet with various agencies in DC, and we'll be going back and forth for training sessions and other things so that we can be better equipped to help people deal with resolving some of the issues that we're seeing. We will also be putting forth petitions in government to help people get justice, and that's something that we have been working on already so far. We have some petitions that have recently been filed in the state of Colorado, Michigan, Texas, and Arizona, and we will be continuing.
But we can't do this on our own. We will be traveling to events and training courses, as well as DC on a consistent basis. We also have to get acceptable equipment, such as computers, cameras, interview gear, etc. There will be other miscellaneous costs that would also be like gas, food, and rooms if necessary.
So that is why we are working towards combating human trafficking, and that is exactly why we need your help. We cannot do this alone, and most what the Keras Project does is on its own dime. And so we do love and appreciate each and every one of you that support us and all the work that we do. As many of you know, we also live stream on Lindell TV every day. And everything we do, like I said, is on our own dime. So we appreciate all the love and support and all the people who do donate. And we would very much love and appreciate that still. Thank you everybody for your time and considerations. And thank you for all the support. And we will catch you guys in the next one, and hopefully we might see you guys in the future and come across you and maybe be able to do some great things together.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Keras Project podcast. Today we have with us Mary Knight. She is a relationship coach who has an interesting path on having to go from, I guess, being a single mother who went to becoming a sex worker and went through different things, got married, and now is giving some relationship coaching, especially to some people that are men from church. So we want to hear about her interesting story about the different things you went through your life. And so, do you want to give yourself a little introduction to our audience?
Yeah, sure. My path was a little unusual as a sex worker, as I started when I was 33 instead of being so young like so many women are. I started off, I was a single mom of 3 kids, all under the age of 12. I had been married and divorced twice at this point at the young age of 34. And I started working as a waitress in a strip club. And then about a month after that, I started working as a stripper. And then shortly after that, I started working for an escort service. And I actually, most of my experiences were very positive. I was in Houston, and I was never in a situation where I was forced into anything. It was more of a choice that I made at my level of consciousness at that time, that I thought that was just the best decision for me, to be able to support myself and my kids and have my youngest at home with me instead of in daycare. That was a big thing for me. Um, Also, along that path, I was seeing other women who had pimps. And I thought, there is no way I'm ever going to get caught up in that. So I learned how to run a business myself. And then, yeah, just kind of from there, I retired from all of that about 14 years ago. And yes, and as Dale mentioned, I am now married. I've been with my husband for 11 years. And all my kids are grown now and successful and happy. And what I do now is I coach men. I started this YouTube channel for women, but it was men who were responding. And so it was this very interesting, just this set of circumstances and this whole turn of events where I was coaching men who were trying to understand their bond with a sex worker, either in the past, like he thought they had something real, and then all of a sudden she just disappeared from his life, or he was married and seeing a sex worker and had fallen in love with her. And so that's what I'm coaching men on, is what is going on really and how to extricate themselves ethically from these kinds of situations. And what I'm finding, as you mentioned, Dale, is that so many of the men.
Hold on, because I mean,
okay, sure, okay, it's a lot, right?
we're not as verbally expressive, and there was, like, as you were talking, a ton of questions. So I gotta ask the dumb questions. So for the people in the audience who are not familiar with your story, the first thing is, you said you were 33, right, when you started and got into this. People are going to be like, what happened so late as to what, yes, because usually you see people entering these things much earlier.
Yeah, I mean, when I was at the strip club, I was working with a bunch of teenagers, really, in Texas at that time. So that was 1998. And you could work in a strip club, even though you couldn't buy a drink. You could work in a strip club when you were 17. And a lot of times strip clubs didn't like hiring girls so young, but they would.
17.
So 17. I don't know if that's still true, but it was true back then in 1998 in Texas. Crazy, right?
Yeah. Right?
I'm smiling because it's so crazy. Yeah. So I was a little bit of a mother hen to some of them, but I was just always, I thought, wow, at 33, 34, I'm having a tough time with this situation. And I've already been married twice. I'm a grown woman. And I was just trying to imagine these girls learning about sex and developing their sexuality in this very contrived, transactional, superficial situation.
Yes. So, I mean, I guess being at 33, you had a different perspective, but you were a single mother, like you said, at the time.
I was a single mom. I wasn't getting child support from either of my ex-husbands. And I found out later that one of them was in jail on weapons and drug charges, because I knew how to pick them. And that's why I hadn't heard from him. I was wondering why I hadn't heard from him. So I wasn't getting any child support from him or from, the husband I had just left. And it was, he had started to become physically abusive. So the first time that he hit me, I thought, I got to make a plan. I got to get out of here. And so I made a plan, and I secretly squirreled away money. It took me about 4 months and had the help of some friends. And I got an apartment, changed jobs, changed cities, changed my kid's school. And that set the scene for what happened next, which was I wasn't making enough money. And so I started working 2 jobs. I was exhausted.
Of course.
And that's how I got it right. Because that's how I got into the stripping. And then, you get used to seeing things going on around you that are normally only something that if you saw it, it's because you were doing it. But then here it is out in the open, in public. And it's amazing how you get used to that.
Yes, you get normalized to certain situations, especially when a lot of the people around you are doing this, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I grew up, like I said, I grew up in Winnipeg, and I was exposed because, I mean, being up in the hip hop community and stuff, there's a lot of, I mean, pimps and prostitutes, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And I saw a lot of this and a lot of things like that I didn't like, right? Because, like, I mean, like I told you, like one of my friends, a girl that we knew, boyfriend would come by, drag her away, and she'd come back with bruises and stuff. And it was like, that's not cool, right? We were kids, right? And so,
Yeah.
see some of those things.
Yeah. Fortunately for me, and for the women I was working with, I didn't see anything like that.
It's good.
But it was just other stuff. It was just things, again, that you would normally, it was private stuff that I was seeing done just out in the open. And again, it surprised me how quickly I got used to that.
Was this
Because again, I was the odd man out, right? I was the weirdo for not doing that.
Was this at the strip club that you were working at?
Yes, it was a strip club in Houston.
So,
And it was one of the strip clubs. It was just outside the city limits. So I won't go into all the details, but there was a law that was passed in Houston. It was called the 3-foot rule. So you couldn't be any closer to a patron than 3 feet when you were giving them a lap dance. And the ways that if you wanted to do that, you had to get a license by the city. And a lot of women didn't want to get a license because then it's a matter of public record. And then it ended up being used against women in custody battles. Even though what they were doing was legal, it was used against them. And then also you've got your real name and a photo of you on your little tag because you had to wear it on your person.
yes.
And so that made women not want to do that. And so they would go to the outskirts of Houston where I was still in the county, but not technically in the city. And so that's where you could give, you could be topless, you could be
Yes,
rub on strangers and all that.
Go
Yeah.
further than what you were allowed to inside of the city. So you begin.
Yeah.
So when you begin to see those things, they become normalized to you, and then you're like, well, now you're in a situation. You've gotten, you're single mother, because once you become a single mother, you're the lowest socioeconomic on bottom of the ladder, so to speak, because it's very difficult. And then you're saying working 2 jobs, you have no time to split between your job and your kids, right? Because you're exhausted all the time and everything else like this, which is also, I mean, not a good situation for anybody to be in. So then that comes in, but just kind of backing up, just what was your background like? Because I'm sure people might, like, growing up, what people are wondering, what your life was like. Like, was it?
Yeah. I mean, I came from an upper middle class family. Both of my parents went to college. They were the first people in their family to go to college. I grew up in Louisiana, going to private school. We moved to Texas when I was a teenager, and then we lived in like a fancy planned community. So then I started going to public school then. But then I also went to a boarding school for part of my high school. So I always went to, I grew up in a very, I guess, when you look at it on the outside, a very normal life. I never wanted for anything materially. And my mom, that was mentally ill, she was diagnosed much later with borderline personality disorder. So I never knew what mom I was going to get home when I came home from school. Never knew which mom I was going to get when I came home from school. And so, I know that played a role in why I was able to become a sex worker and be so comfortable in that role for so long, because I wasn't used to emotional connection.
Of course, because
Mhm.
I listened to with my daughter talking about the situation with her mother. Her mother was a sex worker, and she had issues with drug and alcohol, and some issues also with respect to mental health and some of her diagnoses, and the things that she had to experience and what she talked about affected her later on in life. I mean, it made my job as a father like infinitely harder because I can't do all of those things, right? Like obviously I can only try to help her and push her in the right direction and so forth. So I can only imagine when you're sitting there and you don't know what you're going to get. His mother is the one that does the most critical portion when you're growing up from small. So,
Yeah, and when I was small, she was a stay-at-home mom and she made everything from scratch. And that so I had a very wholesome upbringing in that way. And my mom also, once my parents got divorced when I was like 14, my mom got involved in a non-denominational Christian church, a metaphysical church that was very much into a lot of conspiracy theories. Um, or we thought, we didn't even call them that. That was just the way things were. But now a lot of that stuff is true. The way that I was raised and the things that I believed, it's like, that's true. And I'm thinking, they're just now talking about this stuff. I'm like, yeah, duh. But there was also a lot of darkness in that too, and a lot of control. But yeah, a lot of the stuff, a lot of the health stuff, the way that I was raised was
well,
very, food over pharma. You're not feeling well, drink a bunch of water, take a nap. That's the way that I was raised.
yes, and I just wanted to bring that up because a lot of people will think that okay, you must have been beaten and weren't getting properly fed and all these things. And this is a misconception that people have because I grew up with people and some of them were eating ketchup sandwiches and some of them like had 3 floors and mansions that were millions of dollars in the late 80s and 90s, which is like mega money, right? And so I watch people from all walks of life get into these things, and it's not just your stereotypical people. And this is what we need to understand. And we don't know what circumstances will come on people to get into these situations. This is what I'm just trying to put across.
Well, yeah, and women that I befriended, everybody seemed to have a pretty normal upbringing on the surface. On the surface, when we would become good friends and we would talk about things, it was, I'll say this a lot of times, it was a very, very strict, fundamentalist, religious background where there was a lot of dogma, a lot of concepts, and not a lot of heart where they didn't feel it. They were just being told, well, dogma, and they didn't. It, and I don't know what else to say, but I found that across the board. Like I was one of the few people.
Yes, because this is something that I talk about at length. Because you and one guy I was talking to, he said either you have like the super really strict type of pastors or the ones that are just like very feminine. This is where you see the extremes, which I talk about things called practical Christianity. I stopped going to church for probably about 20 years or so because I was like I couldn't reconcile what I read and what I saw. And I was just like, you guys like you're like some of you guys are like devils. Like sure, there are good people there, but there's some people that are wrong and the ones that seem to be doing the wrong seem to have the loudest voices, which I don't see. Right? Like, because usually the people
Mhm.
that are doing good are trying to do good, and the guys that are doing wrong are always barking. But what I do see is that whole practical aspect of making it the way that you live, not just a set of don't do this or that, or understanding is missing. This is why people end up in those situations, because they miss critical aspects of life, and which is why a lot of the men that are you're seeing there are coming to you for those questions.
Well, because people, I don't see them having a personal relationship with God. That's they're like, oh, I'm a man of faith and this and that, and this has been really hard, and I've never told anyone these things that I'm telling you. I've gone to the Christian counselor. None of that is working. And the way that they talk to me, the things they talk about, is like, oh, you don't, God to you is so far away. And the God they talk about doesn't love them. And that's heartbreaking. I can feel myself kind of like getting emotional thinking about that, because that's the core of what is going on. That's how I felt too. I felt like I didn't matter no matter what I did. Who cares? Doesn't matter. And
That's
that's how these men are feeling.
that you hit the nail on the head, and I agree with you, because a lot of people um, try to put God like there's some high in the sky individual, like that's just way out there. And I'm like, no, if it's not a real relationship, then you're going to have problems, because if you think that that's the person you're modeling yourself after, that's going to translate into all your other relationships. And you're going to start treating them distantly and so forth. And if you don't have that intimate relationship, because I began to, like, for example, look at things where they talk about using the marriage relationship between a man and woman in that type of aspect for God and his people. So I'm like, okay, if you're supposed to have an intimate relationship with, like, your spouse, well, why are you having a distant relationship with God? Because if you, a lot of the people, the way they treated God, if they treat their spouse that way, you'd be divorced very quickly. You wouldn't have a marriage, right? So, I mean, it makes sense what you're saying.
Yeah. And I feel almost like it's, well, to be conspiratorial here, I feel almost like it's done on purpose to keep us from our power, to keep us separated, not just from the love of God, but also from, pitting men against women and race against race, and just like all this ridiculous stuff that it's not real. I'm not saying there aren't real consequences to that kind of behavior and those kinds of thoughts and actions. There are, but I think it's just based on a false premise.
Yes, it is, and it goes back to, like, um destroying families. Like, people, a lot of people, like, for example, like marriage. I listen to people talking, and I talk with my daughter and the younger generation, which I feel for them, because it's the what they're teaching them in schools is like, I mean, it's insane, and what society is pushing them into, and they're not understanding the value and the differences. They're taught like everybody's the same, you can be whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, absolutely not. Like, men and women are different. They're essential. It's essential that we're different, because I'm like, I was giving an example. My daughter, it took me 28 years of her life of helping to put her into circumstances that she could figure this out herself. But if she had a mother that was there, she would have known this like 20 years ago, right? Like, that
Mm-hmm.
I can't do what a mother does, just like a mother can't do what a father does. And this is the nonsense that they need to stop teaching the kids, right?
Yes. Agreed, and because I think that's why we have so many problems with marriage, and so many problems with just, yeah, relationships between men and women, because it I from everything that I hear, because we're inundated with it all, is that we're being taught that men are malfunctioning women. Right? That you're doing it wrong, buddy.
That's a good take. I've not heard that before, but I mean, that's a good way of putting it, right?
Yeah, that you're supposed to express yourself the same way we are. You're supposed to want the same things that we do, the way that we want it, when we want it, how we want it, and you're supposed to understand. It's like, no, because you're men. You're men. And what we are supposed to love about each other, what creates the sexual attraction and polarity, is the differences. Like, I'm madly in love with my husband because of all the things about him that are unlike me. not that we don't share values and have things in common. I don't mean that, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, what I love about men is they're different than me.
Yes. Yes.
So my husband is so different, and I don't understand a lot of what he does. It's okay. I got my own things. Well, can't get too caught up trying to figure him out,
But that's an important thing that people need to understand, is that the difference is good and it's necessary, right? Like, you need to have somebody that's going to complement you, because if you had somebody that was exactly like you, then who's going to do the things that you're bad at, right? Like, I mean, do you know what I'm saying? There's things that, like, I look at and I'm like, no, man, I need a woman to do that. Like, I mean, that's like, because it's like, I feel like a fish out of water, right? Some things come more natural. So why not have the person that can do the things that are more natural to them? And then things work fine. Because, like, who wants to feel like they want to pull their eyeballs out with a rusty screwdriver when they go to do a task? When someone else is like, I love doing this, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's yeah. I think that's every marriage, right? Like yeah. And why try to reinvent the wheel, right? And because what we're talking about too, it's like, it sounds so simple, but it's also the polarity that we experience in, romantic relationships, marriages, is practical too. Like what you just said, you listed all the practical stuff, right? Like, yeah, like there are just certain things that my husband is so much better. It's effortless for him to do, where it would just take me all dang afternoon. And the same with him. But of course, we kind of dance in and out of the masculine and the feminine, because I handle our taxes, right? I am just better at that than he is. And also he travels. So it makes sense that I handle making sure that all the bills get paid, because I'm here. It's part of handling the household for me. We're pretty traditional in that way, even though I do have a YouTube channel and a coaching business. That was his saying, you need to share your wisdom with the world, because if he weren't okay with it, I wouldn't be doing it. Because if he sees me kind of slacking off, he's like, hey, weren't you going to do this, this, and this? I'm like, oh yeah. Like, he keeps me honest.
You actually brought something out that was important, and a couple of things, and we'll get into them. One of the things is that men and women, yes, even though they may have separate roles that they're better at, they still can help each other to go over both sides, because sometimes you're just going to have to pick it up, because if one of you guys got ill or something happened, or you had to go out and, deal with something and you're not there, well, they can't just be like, well, I'm just going to let everything fall to pieces, right? That it's nonsense, right? And so this is where the ideas where you rigidly have to be in one camp or the other. You should be able to have some understanding to give help to the other person, so that when they need that help, or if you have to take over, that you can at least make it function. You may not do it as good as the other one, but at least you can hold the fort down, right?
Yes. And about 5 years ago, my dad had a stroke. And this was such a lesson for me and my kids and all of us as a family, my brother, all of us, was my stepmom did not know my dad's iPhone passcode. She didn't know any of his email passwords, any of his stuff. And he wasn't trying to hide anything. They just didn't think about that. But he had certain bills that were in his name that were, on apps on his phone, or only his email address, or just like all these different things. And that was a lesson to all of us to go, okay, here's all my stuff so that you can get in. And I created shared email accounts for us for bills and for, like my retirement fund that's just in my name, because there's just certain things that, just as a matter of practicality, that because of the shared chores and whatnot, you don't even think about that stuff.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's the whole idea, the shared responsibility. We got to take a short break to hear from the Pillow Man, and we'll be right back.
I hear every day about the products you all wish My Pillow carried. Well, guess what? We probably do. Slippers, bathrobes, pet beds, blankets, mattresses, sleepwear, loungewear, duvets, comforters, pot holders, aprons, oven mitts, and so much more. And they're all on sale. For example, get our best-selling standard My Pillows for only $14.98. Body pillows, $29.98. 6-piece bath towels or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bedsheet sets. Any size, any color, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all MyPillow products. And I've never done this before. When you spend $100 or more, you're going to get 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free.
All right, so if you need any MyPillow products, go to mypillow.com/Karis or call 800-845-2942. Use the promo code Karis. He's got bath stuff like kitchen stuff, beds, all that good stuff. Go check it out and support a good cause. All right, so kind of back to what you're saying. We're talking about the differences in the roles and the responsibilities, and then you also mentioned that sometimes he'll get on you if you're slacking. One misconception is that first one is that women never worked, and this is not true. They just centered their work around their families so that their prioritization could be looking after the kids, because people don't realize how important that is. And this is one thing I can't stand about our society today, is the low value that they place on families and especially your children, because we're seeing the results of what happens when you do that, right? Thoughts on that?
Yeah. Yes, I have a lot of thoughts on that, because when I had become a single mom for that second time, I had, like I said, I had 3 little ones, all under the age of 12, and it drove me bananas that my youngest was in daycare. I hated that because for me personally, I didn't like that. I thought he needed to be home with me. And then I wanted to be home for my kids when they came home from school. That was a huge deal for me. I wanted to be able to sit down with them and get the homework started, make sure they had dinner, all that kind of stuff. Like, that was really, really important to me. And then all of that just kind of went away with that second divorce. And it's so wild to me that really sex work was what gave me that freedom. I could make the money I needed and spend all the time I wanted with my kids. And that was for that time, it worked. It worked. And could I have made different decisions? Probably. Right? Who can't look back on their life and think, oh, I should have done this, this, and this. That's just where I was. That was where my head was. That's how I felt about myself, that was my best option. And that's so wild when I think about that, because I could never make that decision now.
But
I feel so differently about myself now.
Well, yes, and that experience obviously helped shape your life and the choices that you made now. But when you sit down and think about it, you have to sit down and say, why was that something that should have been an option, rather than other sustainable ways for people to look after their kids? This
right. Yeah. Like, why did both of us have to work our faces off to support a family?
Yeah, they changed the way we lived a lot. This is why we got to where we got. And this is kind of what we need to address, because we can't go back and take mistakes or bad choices that we make, but we can learn from them. But the thing is a lot of the times is that we have to start thinking about correcting these things, because if you look at the generation now, they don't have the same resilience as it is, and life is fundamentally changed, because there was no internet like the way it is now, right? And where you do something foolish and it lasts forever, doesn't matter what it is, right? Like, you can't live it down.
Yes. That's got to be so rough on kids. Excuse me, the pressure to know that everything could be documented. And that's Big Brother for you. You don't feel free in that kind of situation. Like, I'm just imagining, like, gosh, think about like when you were a teenager and the stuff you were getting up to, having that online for all posterity.
I'm glad that there wasn't, because we did some really dumb stuff when I was young, like really dumb stuff, right? And so,
You're supposed to. You're supposed to. It's a rite of passage.
yes, but we shouldn't have it there to like beat us for the rest of our lives, which is what we're seeing here. And one of the things, I touch on, I was actually listening to this to that girl Lily Phillips. There's a clip. She's a girl that went off and was like, her and the other girl are trying to see how many people they can sleep with and all of these kinds of things. She,
Oh.
she sat down and talked about how she was watching pornography at 11 years old and then just saw that this was going on. And this is something that is, sure, did people have exposure to it before? But now with the internet, with unfettered access, she's like 20s. So when she was growing up, there was more unfettered access to the internet, and it's just getting worse. So when you start seeing the things that they're teaching in schools and they're getting the access to this, you can see how this is going to go badly because you, when you're like, it's one thing for an adult to do this, but when you're 11, you're finished. Like your brain is not able to tolerate that. It's not.
I mean, I don't even know. I don't even know what I think about that. I know how I feel about it. I don't know how to express it in words, how utterly disturbing and disgusting that is available to an 11-year-old person. There is no reason for that. Well, no good reason for that. Especially available for free. If something's free, that means you're the product. So, it's oof.
This is what I'm saying because I know that all kinds of things can help shape your life, and it takes a lot longer to then sort of get through it. And we're not sitting down and saying that your every challenge is going to go away, but there's some things that you don't want to expose children to, and that is one of them. And every precaution should be taken in order to do that. And like going back to like the schools, they're teaching children that these types of things are acceptable. I don't know how that is in Texas, but here in Canada, like they were sending kids home with like wooden dildos on how to yes,
What?
and yes, to put condoms on them and ask their parents on like their about masturbation and what these types of yes, like at like grade school kids, like very young. And I'm like, kids shouldn't be those things shouldn't enter their heads, right?
No. I mean, I'm thinking about when I learned about those things, especially like the toy aspect, right? Like learning about it. I didn't know what that was. I mean, I was probably like 30. Seriously. But because that's like a fringy thing. I that's yeah, they're trying to normalize all that stuff. For what to what end?
It's not a good one. Like I mean, I've been
Mm-mm.
looking into this and it's not good, right? Like and I mean, this is where we have to protect our children. This is why going back to like the relationship aspect needs to be fixed in a very big way because how we form relationships dictates how our families are. And people are like, well, like I put a thing on social media and somebody made a snide remark and said something about, oh, somebody who's a former sex worker now is going to give somebody relationship advice. And I was like, I'm going to sit down and say, when I look on social media, a lot of the girls that went into the sex work, they're very smart. Not everyone is, but I see a lot of them
Hmm.
that are.
Yeah.
And if you know what something is wrong, it's like if you were a drug addict, you know what not to do for someone who did drugs. Like, or you're telling kids, don't do drugs. You can speak by experience and say, don't do this because X, Y, and Z. So if you had that experience, not saying that people should go into it, but you had went through that experience and you know things that are wrong, you can sit down and say, well, I know what not to do and don't do this because
Well,
right.
also I learned what men told me they felt was missing from their marriages, what they felt was missing from their interactions with their wives. And that was the biggest takeaway for me. That was where I really learned about men and what it meant to be in a relationship,
So,
what it how to
well,
treat a man. Yeah, I'd never knew until it was clients that showed me that.
so what was one of the biggest things that they told you was missing from their relationships from their wives?
They did not feel desired by their wives. They said that it usually started after childbirth, that their wives just weren't as interested in sex. And so I'm thinking, oh, well, it's because she gained little weight and you're just being superficial and you're being ridiculous. But it wasn't that. They were like, oh, I don't care about the weight. I'm still wildly attracted to her. She just doesn't feel attractive anymore. And because of that, she doesn't want to open herself up to me to have sex. And that was such a huge thing. Is like, no, I don't care about the baby weight. Whatever. Who cares? She's the mother of my child. But just that's what I learned too, that it's like more about female desire, which is we have to feel sexy before we want to have sex. Before we can open up, we have to feel that within ourselves. Right. And
Yes.
so that was just, I hope that wasn't like some esoteric answer, but it's like that's what it was. It was just they didn't feel wanted. And then eventually they didn't feel needed in the relationship, because the wife was all about the kids, all about the house, all about socializing, all about all this stuff, but not the man. He was just there to pay for stuff. And so of course they were being trained to see sex workers, right? They're like, well, if I've got to pay for it, well, I know at least if I go see you or another woman like you, I'm going to get sex out of it. To be
Yes.
crude, I mean, that's what was going on. That was the dynamic that they felt had been created at home.
Yes.
Whether or
And
not that's true, that's how they felt.
this is something that I actually noticed, because, like, for example, like the beauty industry and stuff like that, women will do things for other women that men they don't care. They don't care. Like, women are doing stuff and men are just like, they're like, why? Like, we don't like that. We don't care. Like, I mean, I don't, some of the, for example, women, they go get their nails done. I've never heard a guy say, look at her nails. I need to talk to that woman. Never in my life have I ever heard that.
Mhm.
Right? Do they, a lot of the things they care about? No, they're like, okay, so they're women, but some of the things just, you have to understand that the man is going to desire the woman a lot more than she thinks she's desirable. That's usually
Mhm.
generally the case. And so I can see what you're saying.
Mhm.
It makes
Right. And
sense.
part of that is like a cultural indoctrination that we've had towards all of these kind of bizarre beauty standards. And I always thought it was so strange because I had done some modeling in my teenage years because I'm very tall and very thin. And so I had been kind of scouted at an airport to be part of this modeling agency in Houston. And every single hairdresser, choreographer, makeup artist was a gay man. And I'm like, so these men are setting, this is just my little theory. They're the ones setting the beauty standards for women. To want us to look like caricatures of women rather
Yes.
than women. I've always thought that was so strange.
Yes, and actually, the way that modern men began to look at women was done by a man named Edward Bernays. If you go and look into him,
Hmm.
he's
Yes.
Freud's nephew, and he was the one who, first of all, he got women to start smoking en masse by calling them the torches of freedom and associating them with the women's rights marches. And then he changed the perception of how women were viewed, where to this rail thin that looks almost like a little boy. And then
Like a little boy. Hmm.
when you have that, and if you look into the influences in his family's life, you'll begin to start to understand why. But if women looked the way they normally did, a lot of these men would not be able to pass for women, especially when they wear a lot of makeup.
Hmm. Hmm. I agree with you on that. I agree. And certainly, yeah, they can pass for women when they've got the dress on, but the dress comes off and all is revealed.
Yes, but
But yes, but yeah, I was saying, yeah, the beauty standards and all just that because okay, so men, I know men, right? Of course, because I know men. Men don't care about makeup and hair. Some men like that, but that's not. But it's not. They're not going to date or marry somebody because she doesn't wear a lot of makeup. And if a man does like that, who liked that a lot? Elvis Presley. He was way into that, like lots of makeup and hair and fingernails, everything being perfect. But Priscilla Presley was also 14 years old when they met and started dating. So,
Yeah,
he had his.
that's a
It's
whole
yeah.
other thing.
hmm Yeah. So I'm just thinking of people who like that. It's more of like a fetish than like ooh, I need to have that. Like my everyday woman, my wife at home. Yeah. Oh, I'm not attracted to her if she's got a messy bun
That's
and
that's
some shorts on. Right. That's
that's nonsense because
yeah.
a lot of men they obviously they have the attraction for the woman, but if you expect a woman to get up and put on like 5 pounds of makeup, she doesn't look like that normally. So right, like if you're
Right.
feeling that you need to be with a woman like this, maybe find a woman that looks like that rather than making that woman go under all that pressure to try and look this way to please you because you're just going to cause her more stress and anxiety to do so, right? Like it's not going to help your marriage because nobody should be put under that kind of pressure, right? Like
Right. And not to say that men can't have their preferences because they certainly can. Because some men do appreciate when a woman, gets has her hair all done and her nails and her makeup. Some men they really like that because it shows them, oh, she cares. She cares about her appearance. And that's a reflection on him in some ways. But my husband is the kind of man who doesn't care about makeup and all that stuff. So I tease, I get tarted up for these videos because I have lights on me. And so if I don't have makeup on, I look really washed out.
yes.
But as soon as we're done with this, I'm going to go wash my face. That's just my personal preference. But I do get my nails done.
Yeah, and like
It's my thing.
things like that, like I'm like whatever, it's not a big deal. It's neither here nor there. Like it's not going to generally men are not going to stop talking to someone for that unless like maybe you like that one woman I saw that had like probably like 12-inch nails. I'm like that's excessive, right? But
That's a little. How do you do anything?
I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
know, right? But you see that kind of stuff, but that's kind of where we need to kind of get back to sort of that kind of normal thing. Because obviously, like, yeah,
Mhm.
guys like to see if the girl gets done up, but you understand that on a daily basis, that's just not going to happen, right? Because who has time for that, right? And so forth.
It's old school because my stepmom, she's 82. She gets up and she does her hair and puts on makeup. That's just her generation. Or Texas ladies. Maybe it's just Texas ladies. But yeah, that's her thing. She feels funny if she doesn't do that.
Really? Well, I guess so.
No, it's just a thing. It's just a thing, and I think it's great. She always looks really nice. She dresses very well.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Mhm.
That's good that she
Yeah,
does
yeah.
do that. I mean, each person is different. We have a range within people to do things. Like, not we can't all be the same, and this is what people need to understand.
Mhm.
There are differences, but there are some things that are extreme, right? We have to sit down
Right.
and say, like, you see some of those people that are getting plastic surgery and they're unrecognizable and they're looking like you should fire your plastic surgeon. And the
Right.
doctors that are doing this, right?
Eh,
They
well, I think it's like because they don't want to have one wrinkle on their face, but at what cost? Oh my gosh, you don't have any wrinkles, but you don't look human. But yeah, I mean that's poor people. I feel
it,
for people like that. Because they can't see. I mean, do I
yes.
wanna age? No, I do not wanna age. I don't, I don't, but I am, and it's part of life, and thank God, because that means I'm here to age.
Yes, and this is the thing that people don't understand, and this is where we'll probably end up because we're running up on time on this segment. We'll talk
Okay.
about this more on the next segment. Is that how there's this like a lot of the push for women to look younger and everything else like that? What men, a lot of men understand that you age, and a lot of men, when you get older, you begin to your attraction goes up with you. And then also, there's one thing, okay, sure, if you were like 25 and looked like you did when you're 25, none of us do, right? Even if you're in the best shape, you're not going to look like you're 25. But then
Right.
when you start talking to that person that's 25, how you can't reconcile that, like somebody my age be somebody 25. It's no, we're two completely different stages in life, right? And so how do you do that? Like, I don't understand how people do this. You can't in a meaningful way.
Yeah, when I coach, some men and they're like, "Oh, I'm 55 and, this woman I'm attracted to is 25." It's like, "Okay." I feel like they're trying to avoid real vulnerability and real intimacy
It-
because the level that most 25-year-olds are going to want from you, like the level of openness and affection and all that masculine stuff that we want from a man, and a 25-year-old isn't going to demand that from you.
no, they're not. They they don't. When I was 25, I always used to tell people that my head was up my hind parts, like, and I could barely breathe. Right? Like, I was stupid, right? So what
Oh
what
yeah,
can
me too.
what can I expect from a woman in that same type of situation as I was, right? Like, this is where, yeah,
A little more maturity. Come on. We know that women are usually way more mature than men.
yes,
So a little bit more. But a
but
55-year-old wanting a 25-year-old, it's not for her maturity.
yes, 30 years is you can't
30
make that.
years. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I've had women talk. I'm like, you're younger than my daughter. No, right? Like, no.
mhm.
It's just I'm flattered, but no. Why would I do that? Right? I don't. It's nothing wrong with them. It's just like you said, that experience and understanding of doing things. You can tell the difference, and I have to sit down and begin to question people that are doing this. Why are they doing this? Because you're setting yourself up for failure when you're too far out of that gap, right?
Yes, it's for superficial reasons, I think, sexual reasons, and sometimes people just have to experience that in order to understand that and move through it.
Yes, I
You
mean,
know,
some lessons
but
I'd
also,
rather learn from
I
watching
know,
other
right?
people make that mistake.
But don't you think that when you see a woman who say is your daughter's age or younger than her, don't you look at them and think, "Oh my gosh, she looks like a child." That's what I think when I see really young. I'm like, "Are they old enough to drive?" Like, I think everybody looks so young now.
Yes, yes. And when I look at some of these people that I see there, I'm like, she looks like she's 12. Like, I mean, her
Yeah.
face, she looks like a kid, and I'm like, I can't reconcile that in my brain. I don't care what you look like from the neck down. When I see your face, if you look like a child, I'm like, no, can't do it, right?
Yeah, it's just this instinctive thing. And I'm like, "Oh
Yes,
my gosh, it means I'm old. That's the sign that I'm old."
but I wouldn't trade what I have now to go back to being then, because having to navigate life now with that set of experience, not a chance. I would not
Mm-mm.
want to do that. No,
Mm-mm.
not
Me
at all.
either. Me
Actually,
either.
we're gonna have to go into we're running up time in this segment, but when we come back after the break, I want to talk into a little bit more about what you'd mentioned there about the superficial reasons as opposed to and how this kind of affects relationships, because this is a big problem that we're seeing that causes a lot of issues. So before we close this segment, do you want to just tell people how to reach you and so forth and get your 2 minutes? 1 minute?
Yeah, sure. So I have a YouTube channel, Sex, Love, and Soul, and my website is sexloveandsoul.com. And if you wanted to email me with any questions, it's mary@sexloveandsoul.com.
Oh, I just like talking to myself sometimes. Um, there, go check her out. Her links will be in the description if you're watching on Rumble, and if you're watching on Facebook, and I think LinkedIn will also have it as well. So go check it out. She's there. I'm going to close with a prayer. If you're watching on the live stream, you'll see the next part in a few minutes. If you're watching on Lindell TV, you will see it the following day. So I will close here with the prayer, and then we will be right back after the break. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the love, grace, and mercy. We thank you for the hope that you have given us, and we thank you for the work that Mary's doing to use her experiences to help other people, to help teach people how to do things practically. And Lord, I ask of you this day to help the men and the women stand up, to do what's right, and to learn more about you, and that we would make things practical and to rebuild our families, our churches, and our community and our nation, so that we can have some sensibility for the children to grow up in, is my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen. All right,
Amen.
and we will see you guys shortly after this.
Hey everybody, Keisha here, and today I am here with my friend
Jennifer Guskin.
and we need your help. We are right now working on advocacy for combating human trafficking, and here's why. So we'll give you a little bit of background of our story and why we're doing what we're doing.
I was adopted as an infant by a couple who sold me throughout my childhood. I have been to Epstein Island and on multiple Lolita Express types of flights as a child. After I went public, Child Protective Services opened a substance-exposed newborn case, even though all tests came back negative, and they told me that if I wouldn't stop posting on social media, I would never see my daughter again. I started to connect how I was adopted as an infant and then sold throughout my childhood, how many other children who have been through the adoption, foster, and CPS pipelines have also been trafficked to Epstein's Elk.
And as many of you guys know already, based on the work that we do at the Caris Project, I'm an American Indian born in Canada under the Jay Treaty. My father and I were exposed in the improper contagion mitigation for the COVID pandemic in early 2020. As a result of this, I lost everything: a house, cars, corporate assets, jobs. Bank accounts were shut down in Canada, and I fled to the US as an American Indian, fully documented, and was trafficked by rogue agents in ICE and other agents in the government, and forced to live with single American men. I was even imprisoned for 7 months initially, and then trafficked throughout the states. Put on full surveillance tracking and wasn't allowed to leave the city house or state without permission. or work without permission. And that happened for many years, and I was on and off the streets because of that, and in and out of shelters. And that is just a small example of what many go through in this trafficking system, be it the family courts or otherwise. So that's why the CARES Project will be going to DC to speak with representatives and do live reporting. We're also going to be in contact with other families who are dealing with human trafficking, and through the CPS courts or through any other means, lesser versions of trafficking, and doing reporting on them live and otherwise. We will also be working on, we ultimately want to shine light on what's going on with the trafficking here in the US. And we also want to meet with various agencies in DC, and we'll be going back and forth for training sessions and other things so that we can be better equipped to help people deal with resolving some of the issues that we're seeing. We will also be putting forth petitions in government to help people get justice, and that's something that we have been working on already so far. We have some petitions that have recently been filed in the state of Colorado, Michigan, Texas, and Arizona, and we will be continuing.
But we can't do this on our own. We will be traveling to events and training courses, as well as DC on a consistent basis. We also have to get acceptable equipment, such as computers, cameras, interview gear, etc. There will be other miscellaneous costs that would also be like gas, food, and rooms if necessary.
So that is why we are working towards combating human trafficking, and that is exactly why we need your help. We cannot do this alone, and most what the CARES Project does is on its own dime. And so we do love and appreciate each and every one of you that support us and all the work that we do. As many of you know, we also live stream on Lindell TV every day. And everything we do, like I said, is on our own dime. So we appreciate all the love and support and all the people who do donate. And we would very much love and appreciate that still. Thank you everybody for your time and considerations. And thank you for all the support. And we will catch you guys in the next one, and hopefully we might see you guys in the future and come across you and maybe be able to do some great things together.
Hello, everybody, and I am talking to myself again. I seem to do this often. I mean, I guess it must be a sign of old age or something to that effect. But we're back here with Mary Knight, who is the relationship coach and has got a very practical way of dealing with things. And we're going to continue to discuss some of the dynamics with relationships. And I saw one of your podcast or your shows on YouTube, and I was like, because at first I was like, okay, let's see what hear what you have to say. And then I heard you talking, and then I was like, oh, and I was like, you can't be young. You look fairly young. And so I listened. I was like, no, she's got experience. Like, you can tell. And I'm like, so I was like, I want to reach out and talk to you because, I mean, the difference, like when we were talking, the difference between 20 something to when you start getting over into the, you're a Gen X or Gen X, which is
I can't figure that one. I still don't know because I'm so close to a boomer. Because I was born in 65.
Yeah, I
so
think
I'm right on the cusp.
Yes, but you don't have the same boomer mentality because I
okay, that's true. Okay.
So that, but when you look at that, the way that we had to grow up and live and so forth in that generation as opposed to this now, you can see the differences. And you can see the differences of how the relationships are going downwards. And it started with our generation, but we still had a lot more things to deal with. Challenges to overcome. Now they don't have as much, and that affects a lot of their relationships. So let's give me some of the stuff that you're kind of dealing with. Because you said you wanted to start off helping women, but now you're finding that more men are coming to you. So what kinds of
Yeah. Well, originally, so I got certified as a life coach as much as one can get certified as a life coach, uh, about 15 years ago. And I was coaching women who were wanting to keep their marriages spicy. They were wanting to make sure that their husbands didn't want to wander. And that was who I was coaching. And I even wrote a book called How to Keep Your Man Out of My Bed. And that's a little tongue in cheek title, but it was just all about the things that I learned while I was working as an escort. And people really seemed to like it, and people were surprised though, because my information leaned very conservatively, because I learned that's what works. It took me going through all the things I went through as a sex worker, as I was a high-end escort, as an international traveling companion. I was also the madam of a brothel in Houston. So I learned, all kinds of things, talking to men who were coming to me, as a madam and their confidant. And then also when I was an escort. And that's what I saw worked, was traditional ways of being, and there's, degrees of that too. But it was just the more being kind, being open, being soft, all these things that kind of go away when you, I don't know, when you believe that men and women are the same, and that women aren't supposed to be different from men aren't supposed to be different from women. And I think what happens is there's the loss of feminine softness, that's what draws men in, is that feminine softness.
Yes, it does. And when femininity is the women's strength, because when women try to become masculine, they become aggressive. They look at sometimes aggressive men as being masculine, but masculine men are not aggressive. They are assertive, and they will do what needs to be done only if it needs to be done, but they have to have a level of self-control, because women are more emotional, especially, say, for example, if you're going postpartum. Well, the husband doesn't have postpartum, right? Like, he's got to be the stabilizing force. If he's mirroring your postpartum depression or whatever you're going, what's going to happen? It's not going to work well, right? And
Yeah.
and
Somebody has to be the leader,
yeah,
and the thing is that the feminine wants to surrender to the masculine. And we have been taught that surrendering is weak and bad, and that you shouldn't do it.
but
It's like, well, wait a minute.
that's exactly it. But this is okay. And when I began to get older and I began to see things, some of the things that I read in the Bible made more sense. The reason why men lead, because women talk way better than we do. And I'm not even gonna lie about that. And they're good, they're excellent communicators, hands down. So men, we don't speak as much in communication that wise. We are more about speaking by our actions. And so when they have to submit to God in order for them to work, because if they act like being a tyrant in the home, well, who wants to live under tyranny? Nobody, right? But if the man is creating the circumstances for the woman to feel safe, secure, and loved, she's going to naturally respond to those actions. He doesn't have to sit down and say, you need to submit, right? Because that's not going to work. But if he makes her feel loved and secure and safe, she's going to want to go and follow what he's doing.
Well, because that's an invitation for feminine energy. That's how arousal, the arousal cycle works in the female body, is that we actually are not desirous of sex when we're, especially, a dating situation, meeting somebody. Part of it is that we have to feel comfortable. We have to feel relaxed. Like the way the arousal cycle starts in the female body starts with relaxation. And a woman, that's part of our sex drive, right? That's part of the way that we were designed. And it makes us selective, right? Because if we had the same kind of drives as men did, I don't know what the world's population would look like, right? But we were created to be discerning. And one of the ways that we determine whether or not we want to hitch our wagon to a man is, do we feel safe and secure with him? And it's not just about physical safety, it's also emotional safety, mental safety. And it's also the whole provide, protect, and procreate thing, right? That's man's gift to the planet, is your ability to do that, right? And provide that safety so the feminine energy can open and flow. Because a woman's not going to open up to you if she doesn't feel comfortable with you or relaxed.
I really like the word that you said, provide safety, because so many times they're taught that provision is finances. And I'm not sitting down and saying that a man shouldn't provide financially. I'm saying finances are the very smallest portion of the provision, because it really denigrates what men are supposed to do. And what a lot of people, men, even a lot of men, don't realize, because this has never been transmitted to them, and women need to understand this. When a man is wired to work for things, and he values what he works for, and this includes the woman. Now, if a woman goes up and gets sexually intimate with a man, in the back of his mind, right away, he's not gonna think about it in this way. A woman has to do things to, like, allow the man to learn about her. And what I'd say is that sex to men is like worse than drugs. And I'm not gonna lie, because you go to any man and you ask him about the top 10 dumb things in his life, and it will begin with "because she." Almost guaranteed. Because men, because we're designed to go and protect women and do these types of things, and sometimes with the wrong women we'll do, or even if we're trying to get the right woman, we might go and do something a little stupid, right? Because we take risks. Sure. We're more the risk takers. But what the man needs to do is he needs to study the woman before he gets sexually intimate with her, because then he begins to see what she needs. Because what we're designed to do as men, we're the ones that because we're visual, very visual, and this is why we can see things to need, and then we can draw out the best in her. We're to help the woman to become comfortable by drawing out things from her. And we have to sit down and see, are we capable to do these things? And does she have the right types of things? And if a man does those things, then his sexual experiences will be much greater than what he will experience, but he can never experience them until he learns how to do this to the woman.
That's really beautiful, the way you said that, because I could feel myself just relaxing when you were talking about that, because it really is that, it's that beautiful. But for a man to be able to do that, he has to be present. He has to be not just physically there, but he also has to be there mentally and emotionally. And so many men are, and women do this too, but we're talking about female sex drive right now and attraction. And the men that I coach, they're nice guys, right? They're nice guys. They're nice guys in their marriage. They're nice guys out dating. And they're finding that, women will accept a date with me, one date, but then she'll never go on another date with me. Or I'm in a low sex, no sex marriage with my wife. And they say, after watching your videos, I realize, I'm being nice because I'm not in my masculine presence. I'm in my head. I'm trying to figure things out instead of, also trying to apply logic to feelings and emotion. And when you do that, because they're not the same thing and it doesn't work, and all you do is get frustrated. And then we hear things like, women don't know what they want. Women say one thing when they mean another. And then we hear, then women are saying, well, men are only after one thing. He's using my body. He's not trying to connect with me. And it's not that may not be the man's intention. Yeah, he wants to connect with his wife, but if he's in his head all the time, he can't do that, because a woman wants to feel that masculine presence. We need to feel it. And y'all just do stuff without even trying that is so attractive to us.
That's you hit the nail on the head. This is what you do things, because men try to talk and reason this out. You can't. At some point, I grew up with 5 women. I learned very quickly that sometimes you can't reason with your mouth. You just have to do things. And I learned that if I changed my actions, that I would get the right responses, because I can't win a war with words with a woman, because a woman, when her brain shuts off, she can still talk. Men, eventually our mouths just shut down and we can't say anything, and then we have to walk away, because then, you know what I mean, like we will go down to, like, our resort is, if we were standing in front of a man, we'd be fighting. We're like, we can't do this to a woman, so I have to leave, right? So I have to alter my behavior, and this has to be done in an ethical manner, because when I watch men doing this, I see what they're doing, and I want, like, to reach through them, strangle them, honestly, because it's vile and disgusting, because you should never do this to a woman that you have no intention to deal with. But we have to use our actions and create that, because women will mirror your emotions. This is what I've learned from interacting with all kinds of women, whether they were my ex-wife, or any of the women that I dated, or whether it was even family members, because, like, with my mother, if we get into an argument, I would just hug her and say, "I love you, Mom." And then she would start dropping her anger, right? Since this is what we have to do as men. So, sorry. I know it was a little bit long.
Yeah. No, I love it. And it's the thing that about masculine energy is that in its finest form, it's relaxed, it's steady, it's stable, it's also playful, and that's what you're talking about when you hug your mom and say, "I love you, Mom." That was like a playful aspect of the masculine that I think some men, they forget, or they think, oh, that's not appropriate, or because they're so caught up in a situation that's very stressful to them. It's very hurtful and stressful when this person that you had, the mother of your children, you've built this life with her, and then she doesn't want you. She'll stay married to you, and, y'all have this household, but you're roommates. And I know for a lot of men, after being rejected for so long, they just give up because they can't stand the rejection, and they don't know what else to do, because, like what you were saying, the words don't work, because it's not about words. They're intellectualizing, because to them, sex and desire have become a concept. It's no longer this shared experience they have with the only person in the world that they're having sex with, their wives, this special world they've created together. And so to them, it's like a debate. It's a battle of the wills, instead of, come over here.
Yes.
And kind of coming up behind her, grabbing her by the waist and nuzzling her neck. And, it's not, that's like a distant dream.
And this is, like, you brought, I mean, this is what you're saying. I agree with. And I like hearing it from your perspective. And this is where when I talk to people, I say you need to have a male and female perspective, because they're going to bring each side, like, that you're going to get a complete picture. And I keep saying this over and over again, because if you only go to one, you're going to get half. And you go to the other, you're going to get half, and you're going to get the incomplete thing. But with this whole idea is that the man should be able, is supposed to create the circumstances for this. And he's got to look, and he's got to pay attention to what's going on. And yes, like you sit down and say, be present. And he has to be able to study what is going on with his wife, so that he can help to de-escalate the situation and meet the needs. Sometimes you do have to ask questions, but he has to pay attention to respond, because I know that it's like, because I don't understand the way a woman thinks. And I know that I try to take a guess, and it's a lot like you're, basically trial and error. And then you're like, okay, well, I got 6 like good responses rather than 10 bad ones. So maybe I'll start trying this route, but then you continue to get better with it, right? And it helps the relationship along.
It definitely. And I'm smiling because, my husband is just an amazing man, right? He really is. And when we have some kind of, I won't even say an argument, but just some kind of, misunderstanding, something going on, he really does not understand why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. Like, it is just beyond him, like, what is happening. And I know that, right, because I'm a coach. So I can give him grace and I just leave him alone. Because what's the point? He doesn't get it. And so he just needs to do stuff. So he just can do things like you're saying, taking some action. Because like that's why like marriage counseling and talk therapy, I'm not saying that it never works and it's a terrible thing. It's great for women, not so great for men. Because y'all don't process things the same way. And sitting around talking about something over and over and over and over again, it's emasculating. Y'all just need to get out there and do some stuff. And I know, and it sounds so simplistic but it's true. That's not the way that y'all, and your laughter proves it, right? That's not how you feel great about stuff. Not that you don't need to express feelings and emotions and ask questions, of your woman, but to go on and on and on and on, that is not, y'all don't like that.
Yes, because women will process while they're talking. Men do not. Like, I've always had to tell them, like, especially in an emotionally charged one, especially with my daughter too, I'm like, stop. I'm like, stop for a second. I'm like, my brain needs to catch up to your words. I said, when you guys are sitting down talking with a bunch of girls, you guys are all like picking up what they're laying down in real time. I'm like, I have to translate what you're actually trying to say in my brain while you're saying it, and you're talking like 10 miles a minute, right? Like, so, right? So I acknowledge that. And so when a woman conversely does something to me, I have to sit back and think, she's not coming from the same perspective, because I watch women say things to each other that men, they scratch their heads because they're like, somebody would be lying on the floor if a man came up and said that to another man, right? But women, this is the way they operate. So we understand they're different, but you have to train yourself to realize that difference is there, so that you get less mad. You're like, oh, she's just coming from a different place. Let me figure out where it is. Right.
Well, yeah. And it's like how sometimes y'all think we're psychic, because or how we just know stuff, it's because we're taking in so many different pieces of information from our environment, and a lot of women are very good at reading people. I know I am. I'm very, very good at reading people. But I think also it's because of my childhood, right? And that's something that a lot of positive stuff came out of my childhood. But that was something is like reading people, because it's a way to stay safe. We extrapolate all this information from the man in front of us.
Yes.
And it is funny. Yeah, you think that's why you think we're psychic, because y'all don't have to pay attention to all the stuff that we do.
You guys pay attention to more details. Women are more detail oriented, and it's necessary because you have to look after a baby that doesn't talk, right? Like, I mean,
that's right.
Whereas with us, it's it's a good thing that mothers are the way they are. Otherwise, less children would reach adulthood, right?
Yes. Another thing that I think maybe many men aren't aware of, maybe women too, is that women have a keener sense of smell. So that's why sometimes we're like, oh gosh, you're so stinky. And you're like, what? And y'all don't think, you don't smell it, but we do.
Yes.
I think it's so we would know which baby was ours, right? We're smelling the tops of babies' heads. We would know which one was ours.
And men and women do read things a little bit differently, because how we read people, because men are more behavioral because we're very visual, and we observe things. Like when a woman has a problem, a man, it's written all over her face. She can't hide that from a man, especially if they know each other very well. And women will think that they're hiding it from the man, and the man's like, what's the issue? And then she's like, nothing. And man knows you're lying, but I'm not going to provoke the bear right now. But we're designed to help the ones, like I tell people, for example, if woman just had a baby and you're in a very vulnerable situation, a man has to be able to look at them to see what they need, what their needs are, to quickly assess them, and also look after the surroundings to make sure that if you guys were like in a cabin in the woods, the big bear doesn't come and take you all out, right? So that's what we're designed to do. So
right. It's beautifully designed. I love it. And the thing too, I think sometimes when people are having, stressful relationship problems, and men hear, oh, I'm supposed to be in masculine energy and paying attention to her and drawing her out. Oh, it just seems like so much work. I'm not saying that it doesn't take effort, but once you just can relax into yourself and just know that you are enough because you're a man, and you tap into the natural masculine presence that you have, even if you don't even know what I'm talking about, if you can just take in just a deep breath and let it out and just think, okay, and start from there instead of like getting ready for battle. And then looking at every interaction with your wife as adversarial. I'm simplifying it right now for sure, but it is not as complicated as we sometimes like to make it. Right, because
Yeah,
we bring in stories, right? We bring in story, and not saying it's not complex, right? But it doesn't have to be complicated. It's that, our egos get involved, and we just make up stories
yeah,
about, oh, well, she's acting like this because she's this and that, or because I did this 20 years ago, and that's why this has happened. Just again, stories.
yes.
Thinking, too much thinking.
Yes, there is. We're going to take a short commercial break, and we're going to come back and talk about this a little further.
I hear every day about the products you all wish My Pillow carried. Well, guess what? We probably do. Slippers, bathrobes, pet beds, blankets, mattresses, sleepwear, loungewear, duvets, comforters, pot holders, aprons, oven mitts, and so much more. And they're all on sale. For example, get our best-selling standard My Pillows for only $14.98. Body pillows, $29.98. 6-piece bath towels or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Multi-use My Pillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bedsheet sets. Any size, any color, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all My Pillow products. And I've never done this before. When you spend $100 or more, you're going to get 2 standard My Pillows absolutely free.
All right. So if you need any of the My Pillow products, go to mypillow.com/Karis or call 800-845-2942. Use the promo code Karis. You've got a lot of good stuff. Support a good cause. Get some good pillows and other good household items like kitchen, bath towels, and even beds. So go check it out. All right. So kind of going back to like what we're talking about here. I mean, I think that a lot of this need to start exploring more of the different dynamics, and women too have to have some more responsibility. When I look at some of the things that are happening here, they also too have to recognize that we are not like they are, and that they can't expect us to operate in that kind of manner. Can you give us a little bit about what you've heard about that type of aspect? What you have to say?
Yeah. Well, what happens in a lot of marriages where there's the no sex, low sex, because the man wants to be kind and compassionate and understanding about it, and certainly doesn't ever want to feel like his wife is doing it out of duty, or that she feels forced into it in any way, right? Because he's a decent human being. He wants her to want him. But what happens over time is, because this rejection for so long, that he is waiting for permission to feel desire from her. So when a man is waiting for permission from a woman, she is in the leadership role. And a woman does not want to be the leader in the relationship. She doesn't want to be calling the shots when it comes to romance. And again, I want to emphasize.
Can you just say that one more time, just so that people can be clear on that? Because that was very important what you said.
Which part? The whole thing?
About asking for permission and being in the leadership role?
Yes, because it's just a natural reaction for, a man, a nice man. He wants to be a decent human being, so he is waiting for permission to feel desire for his wife. He's waiting for permission to make a move. And so by default, now she's the leader. She's calling all the shots when it comes to romance. And I guarantee you, a woman does not want to be in that position. And then when she gets used to being in that position, that control, that the dominant position, it doesn't feel good to her. And it's created this vicious cycle. Now, can a woman kind of back out of that? Absolutely. And I think that's, Dale, where you were talking about responsibility. She needs to be
Yes.
responsible for, wait a minute, I don't feel good. I don't like the way this feels. What can I do so that I can feel better? Oh, because no woman, it does not feel good when we're being controlling and dominating. Now, and I want to emphasize this. We go in and out of masculine and feminine energy throughout our day. It just depends on what you've got going on. You know, when I'm creating my YouTube channel and I'm doing editing and I'm uploading, I'm strategizing, doing all those things, I'm in my masculine. Like I have to be, because that's the structure, the strategizing, all that stuff. That's masculine energy. That is not. It doesn't mean that I can't give it a little feminine magic to it, but it's all that is structure, right? That is leading. And that's my role. And sometimes I get tired doing a YouTube channel. And so I have my days I do it and days I don't. And my husband leaves the house on the days that I'm creating videos and I'm strategizing and doing all that stuff. It's just, I just feel better. And he's a musician, so he goes to a studio. But what I'm saying is that I need to be a leader sometimes, but not in the romantic department of my marriage. That doesn't mean I don't initiate, but it just means that he doesn't ask permission to feel desire, because once a man starts to defer to a woman in that way, it doesn't feel good to anybody.
No, it's not the natural order of things.
And that's a recipe for infidelity.
Yes.
That's what happens. It's not, no, I want to make this clear also. No man is ever like, oh, I know. I'm going to go find an attractive, willing woman who's not my wife, and I'm going to go have a sexual relationship with her, whether it's for an hour or whether I have an affair. No happy man ever does that. Happy people don't cheat. Happy people don't get involved in sex work on either end of it. That is not what is going on in those situations. It is a symptom. Just like a lack of sex in a marriage, it's a symptom of other things going on.
That is, I agree with this. And I keep telling people that they have to look at the underlying problems, because when you start addressing those things, you're going to start finding the solutions. And for when women should, like, and this is one of the things that they're taught, and feminism has a lot to do with this, by teaching empowerment in sex. That's not, sex is never to be about power. It is to be about love, and it should be about affection and building a bond together on mutual love and respect, not power. Because if you're using it about power, someone's taking power from someone, and there's a winner and a loser. And that is not the way a relationship should work, because you're supposed to be one and working together, not fighting for power. When you bring that dynamic in there, and feminism wasn't the first part to bring that into there, but they're certainly pushing it. And now you have that whole red pill, or whatever they want to call it now, that they're both all into a power struggle, and that's not the way. That's a good way to destroy things, right? So,
well, I agree with you. I was thinking, oh, well, that's the problem with the red pill movement, is that they have made sex about power. So they're being the feminine energy, and then the feminist movement is being the masculine energy, right? Because I think a lot of those red pill guys are very much in their feminine energy. They don't think of themselves that way, but if you really understand masculine, feminine energy, they've gone too far over onto the other side of the spectrum. And then they're acting like they're a prize to be won, and that women should court them. Like that's some of the messaging that I'm hearing from that community, which is right. That's feminine. So that's estrogen talking. So these guys are so full of estrogen and they don't even know it. But there are good things about the red pill because it does teach men like the basics, like take care of your body, take care of yourself, get your money straight, clean up your environment, take responsibility. Like, I think all that's wonderful. But I think all the wonderful stuff stops there, because then the way they view women in relationships is all about power. And I love what you said. That was very well put. I like that.
Thank you. I mean, this is why, the conversations like this, because we're both bringing important things to the table that now you get a more well-rounded picture, which is what needs to happen. So with what they're doing is that they're also taking care of yourself. Men are supposed to take care of themselves, but men are also designed in a manner that if they have to sacrifice for their family, they're going to sacrifice even the point of sacrificing their life. This is the way men are. So if men have they're always calculating what needs to be done to make the family thrive. And sometimes men let themselves go because it's necessary, because it will take away. They will do enough to keep themselves going so that they can look after their loved ones. And sometimes it will mean that they're not going to be in the best condition because it is warranted. People need to understand this, because a lot of the times they will just take a look at a man at a certain snapshot and think that that's the way the man is. But it's like, what is he actually doing? Who is he helping? Because we will, like, when the man has the right woman, he'll run through brick walls. He will go through burning buildings and all that kind of stuff for his family. And sometimes it causes him harm, right? But it's necessary.
Yeah, it's finding that right person, right? That inspires that in you. I think there's a lot to be said for natural compatibility, because I think that, if we get ahead of before marriage, before people get to marriage, I believe we're being taught that, and men are being taught this, I know for sure, that a date is an opportunity to get someone to like you, that you're trying to convince them that you're good enough. And that is not what a date is about. A date is getting to know someone. That's it. And you get to see, oh, I'm myself, and this is the way I talk, the way I act. These are my life's experiences. Oh, well, she likes that? Awesome. I'll ask her out again. She doesn't like it? Who cares? Next. That's what dating is supposed to be about. And it's been turned into something else. And I think it just makes men feel so uneasy and so uncomfortable. And women too. Because then women are like, I don't even know this guy. I'm not going to go out with him again. I don't even know him. He didn't tell me anything. He just was trying to agree with me on everything. And again, putting her in the leadership role.
You can't, and some, because of a lot of the dynamics, people are feel pressured to go in and get a response. And it's like, if they're not compatible and you think you see things, why go further and cause yourself more problems? Because you hear people say it, well, I saw it a mile away, but I still did it anyway. I'm like,
yes.
Like, really? Come on. Right?
Yeah, there's, instant gratification, or not understanding relationships, not understanding the purpose of dating. Because what I tell the single guys is, the reason that you want to go out on a date with a woman is because you want to have sex with her. Right? You're sexually attracted. That is what sparked the initial interest. The reason she said yes is because you did a good job at seducing her. Right? You did a good job of making her feel comfortable enough and curious enough about you to say yes to the date. Now, it doesn't mean that you're trying to have sex with her right away, but that's what the initial attraction was, oh, wow. And even if you don't even think of it as like, oh, she's so hot, it's like, oh, I just feel, oh, yeah, I want to get to know her better. Right? And that's the purpose of the date, is getting to know each other well enough to know if you want to take things to the next level somewhere down the road. That's it. And I don't know why we make it so dang complicated. And yeah, sometimes a man sees a woman's fingernails and he's like, oh, I need to ask that lady out.
There might be a few, but most men probably
no. No, it's other stuff. It could be a smile. It could be the way she moves. It could be her hair. There's something. It's a beauty that's about her, because that's what attracts men, right? Is beauty.
Yes, and
Hmm.
also what attracts men is what women can do that are unique to women. Like women, when they
Mhm.
come in, they're like, "Oh, well, I can take care of my bills, this and that." Man's like, "So, right? Like that's what I'm expected to do. I have to do that, right? That's not what I need. I need someone who can offer me things like to complement what I can't do, and this is what men
Yeah.
inherently are looking for. And money means really nothing. Like, I mean, it's not like saying that it's nothing, but it's not like the woman has to make X dollars. I've never heard a man say that a woman needs to make X amount of dollars. It's like,
Well, when I
so
was coaching mostly women, single women wanting to go on dates, they were treating dates like an audition. It's like a man does not care about your accomplishments. That is not how you want a man to connect to you. Men connect to other men through their accomplishments, through respect. That's not what you want. You want a heart connection. A man wants to know that he has a place in your life. He wants to know how he can make your life better. Right? That's what I feel like men are always looking to do. Oh, how can I help? How can I make your life better? How can I give? Like that's just part of the male drive
yes,
to the
and
right woman, not to everybody, but to the right people.
yes, and they'll men will be basically helpful to other people and so forth
Mm.
in the way that there's, but they want to have that person that they can that pour their lives into, because that's what a man wants. A man wants somebody that's going to be by his side and to face life's difficulties with him, but he's going to stand in front so that they don't have to take the brunt of it. Because now the way our society is being shifted is women are being placed in the situations where traditionally men are, and they're going through the meat grinder, and it's creating more problems for them. And even the way that the society is built, a lot of it is fairly artificial in the way that it's contrived, because it changes the dynamic of things. And this is something that we have to look at. Like, I mean, because when you look at even the dating, women are chasing men. This is very bad. Like, it is extremely bad, because you're saying that changing the dynamic of the women that are coming there, the women are becoming more aggressive. When women become aggressive, it's worse than men competing against each other, because that's not the natural order of things. Women like to get along and kind of help everybody come together. They're not normally the competitive ones, where men is like, "Oh, well, that's war, too bad, you just lost out, try again next time," right? That's right.
Yeah. Well, I think that because of course people ask me these questions, and I honestly I don't know a lot about pop culture because I don't really. My husband and I don't have cable. We don't really watch. We have our little programs we like to watch on streaming services and things, but really that's not. We're both creators. We're both, we have a big house we live in by ourselves. I have three grown kids. We have a grandbaby. We have his family lives in Austin, close to us. We have a very full, rich life. So I don't know a whole lot about pop culture. People are like, oh, would you talk about this? Would you talk about that on your YouTube channel? And I'm like, but then I have to expose myself to all that kind of stuff. And I'll be honest, I don't really care. But one thing that I am, after that little diatribe, one thing I do am fascinated by that happened, I guess, when really started happening in the mid 60s, right, when I was a kid, is this sexual revolution. And I just, I know the sexual revolution, the only thing that it did is it took away a woman's kind of freedom to say no to sex. Because before it was just kind of built into the culture. Like it's expected that you are not available for sex right away. It's something that a man has to work towards. And now it's, I think that now it's not true. And I think it's just put us in a bad spot. It's really
Yeah,
put us in a bad spot.
we should actually go and have a discussion in the future about the sexual revolution, because that is a very, like, very deep discussion, because the impacts of that change the dynamic of our society a lot, and it needs a good topic, because this is something that we see the effects of today, and terrible. Terrible.
Yeah. It is terrible because it really did. It's a lot, those things were put in place to protect women, and like you were saying earlier, like the empowerment, it was not empowering. And I know people are saying, oh, well, sex work, oh, it's so empowering. Porn, it's so empowering. It's like, it is until it isn't. Because, it, take it from someone who knows. No, I mean, it helped me out a lot in a lot of ways. It took away because they were self-imposed in a lot of ways, because I hid myself from people for a long time. It took me a while to learn how to open myself up again, to not just sexually to men, not just emotionally to men, but also emotionally to all kinds of people, because I always had this secret life,
Yes.
So it doesn't matter what your secret is, right? It's still, it's a huge burden. And so like having, being able to have sex whenever, wherever, however I want, how is that empowering? I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I never understood that. It's like, hooray, yay.
Yes, and why does empowerment have to be with sex? Like, I mean, like,
I
like,
know.
do you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
because I was discussing with my daughter, we were watching, and it was actually talking about this woman who's a golfer, and she ended up being in a situation. But when you start seeing women in competition in high stress situations, their natural reaction is to take their clothes off to get more attention. Men, yes, yes, you see it across. Like, this is the way things are set up this way. Yes, women will take more because women attract attention. Men go and seek out. This is our nature. Women don't create the circumstances. Men can just like save your life or destroy your life without ever seeing your face. This is the way that God designed us to be protectors, so that you don't have to see us while we're protecting you guys and taking out everybody around and making your life easier. So men create circumstances to create opportunities for themselves. Women don't do it with other men. They don't. Like how they operate with women don't work with men. Men deal with the men. And so when you put a woman in that situation, this is why women will start trying to compete to get seen, and what's going to get more attention, the more things that are going to grab the men's eyes.
Okay, sure.
Right? And this is like, when I see this happening, it's done by design in a lot of places, and it's wrong. And this is why we're getting some of these things that we're seeing that are fueling these things, because men are behind a lot of this. Wrong kind
of stuff. For fun and profit. Yeah.
Yes. And there's nothing wrong with making money, but when you're putting people into bad situations for them to make it easier for them to make wrong choices, that's a very wrong way to make money, right?
I agree, also because you're taking advantage of someone.
Yes.
A vulnerable person. That's exploitation. That's the absolute lowest of the low, because they know what they're doing. And I guess we're talking about pornography, some of those sites too, like straight up porn movies, but also some of those sites. I don't know if you say their names on here or not.
But, yeah, you can say whatever names.
Yeah, like OnlyFans, and how I heard some statistics recently that 1% of creators make a lot of money, and then I think 3%, maybe 10%. Let me be generous. 10% of all the creators, models on OnlyFans make $1,800 a year.
Yes, most of them
and
don't.
The rest make nothing.
Yes, there's a lot of. I actually watched a sex worker, and she's a very smart girl. She looked at the way that she did a Substack article about the structure of OnlyFans, and when I looked at it, she was asking questions on what may this be, and that we should look into it. And I looked at it, and I was like, a man design that I know exactly what they're using it for, and I said, it's not good. It's not a very good model. Oh yes, because men and women see things very differently, and we get different perspectives. And when a man sets something up, it's very easy for a man to see what he's doing. It's not as easy for a woman, just like if a woman sets something up, it's not as easy because our thinking patterns are different, right? How we might get to the same goal, but how the route that we take there is very different, right? So we don't see the same steps in between because I'm like, I don't know how you got there. I see that you did this. What you did didn't make sense, but you got there, right? And so it's
Yes.
and so that it is, yeah, that
Well,
needs
it's
to
kind
get discussed. Go ahead.
of okay. I know. I know we probably have. This is the first time that we've spoken formally like this, but it's we have so many things that to talk about, and I have some things that I want to talk to you about. I really want to get more. I know we don't have time today, but I really want to have us to have a discussion, whether here again or on my channel about power, the power dynamic. I love that. I absolutely love that. And talking about how, yes, that whenever a man is trying to lead through power, the outcomes are usually not going to be very good for most people involved, except for him. And even then, it's a spiritually hollow victory, if it's a
Yes,
victory at all. So
yeah,
I'm fascinated by that because we're fascinated. Our culture is fascinated by power.
yes, it is, and it's a how it's a wrong way, and because they're cultivating this, we should have a discussion of what actually love should be, especially coming from a man's perspective, because they're the ones that lay down and they're the ones who set the tone for this. And it's because they stepped off of this. This is why we're in this situation that we're in. And they have to be the ones to correct it because we're the natural leaders and so forth. But the women still have to respond and they have their responsibilities. But the men were the ones who initially had to set the motion of this going into it, right? And then the women followed
Yeah.
suit and everybody went headlong because once the women did, we were done because you transmit to that your children finish. And this is why the government went after women because they wanted to take the place of the mothers. And well, this is the mess we're in.
Well, I think that the government, especially with you know, socialist leaning governments like what our government started doing in the 60s was the government wants to be our daddy, right? And saying that men aren't necessary. We don't, you don't need a man to raise children. Kids don't need a father. That's not important. And it's because I really think because the government wants to be daddy and now government wants to be mommy. That's
Yes,
not gonna, I don't like that.
you're correct. We're running up on time here today, but
Mhm.
we will be back again to talk about this. So, what do you want to tell people before we close down here today?
Oh my goodness. We talked about so many wonderful, amazing things. I want people to know that, yeah, I believe in love. Just think about like all the baggage that I've had, all the crazy experiences, just the, well, I'm not even sure the word I want to use right now, but I was able to meet my husband. We were both 49 years old. I was a retired sex worker. By the time I met him, I had been married and divorced 3 times. And if I can find love and grace and forgiveness and have an amazing, incredible relationship with this man, then anybody else can do it too. And I'm also close to my family. Now, I'm not saying it didn't take me a lot of work because it did. But again, if I did it, you can do it too. There is hope for the American marriage. There's hope for all of us. We just have to keep on trucking.
That's a very good message, and I agree that we need to start to kind of rebuild based on what we have. We're not going to have an ideal set of circumstances, and these are something that we'll have to discuss at length. But this was a very great
Okay.
conversation. We'll look forward to talking with you again soon. And everybody, check her out. Her links are in the description. If you're watching on Rumble, if you're watching on, I guess that would be Facebook and LinkedIn and so forth. Or, yeah, you can find that out. So
YouTube. Mhm.
I'll close here with a prayer and then we will see everybody again next time.
Okay. Thank
All
you.
right. You're welcome. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your love, grace, and mercy. We thank you for the hope that you have given us this day, and bless the work that Mary is doing and others like her, and all the men and the women can come together to rebuild our families, our relationships, and our children, that they could get some sensible learning from our parents. We've run off the rails. And help us to restore our churches and our communities and our nation is my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you guys again soon.